Brooklyn Heights Association and the Avenue Community Grad Area Community Council are part of an initiative called Brooklyn Speaks, and we've focused over the last 5 years specifically on challenges and problems with governance of the Atlantic Yards project. There are 4 things that I want to tell you about that are going on with respect to governance on Atlantic Yards, and they all interlock as part of a strategy to get leverage for our community to affect the kind of change on the site that the rest of this meeting is about. The 4 things are this. First of all, there's a legal fight going on right now. Although probably most of you are familiar with the eminent domain fight that Ron mentioned, there is a legal fight going on right now with respect to ESDC's approval of the 2009 Atlantic Yards General Project Plan. That's a suit that's been brought by a number of the organizations that are in the Brooklyn Speaks group, also Develop Don't Destroy is part of that as well, and that is still an outstanding court case. We actually won the last decision in that in November of 2010 when a judge found that there was doubt the ESDC had a rational basis in approving the changes that extended the Atlantic Yards plan for an additional 15 years. So in that suit, we were looking to reverse the approval of the 2009 modified general project plan, and on that reversal, we are looking to stay further construction at the Atlantic Yards site until some of the issues around site programming and such can be more fully explored. The second thing I want to tell you about is reform. Atlantic Yards is was conceived by the developer in a very, very sophisticated way as being a project that it could structure in order to get an unprecedented level of control, not only of 22 acres of Brooklyn, but also control over, in a way, the street network surrounding the site, the delivery of certain kinds of services that are normally thought of as things the government is involved in. That is a very detrimental structure for those of us here in this community, giving that much authority to a private developer. How do we fix it? Well, Atlantic Yards is the only large ESDC project that does not have any type of LDC or subsidiary that's responsible for decision making. So we have sought to have the ESD directed to establish a subsidiary with outside directors so there is transparency in decision making and involvement with our local elected officials. And again, this dovetails, as you might imagine, with some of the concerns involved in our legal strategy, like how this project ever got extended for 15 years in 2000 without local input to begin with. The third thing I want to mention is what I guess, for lack of a better word, I would call monitoring. Councilmember James has worked very hard, very diligently with the Borough President's Office to set up something called the Atlantic Yards Service Cabinet, and that meets periodically. The next meeting will take place on July 14th. Is that right? And this is a platform for getting information and also posing issues to the ESDC, Forest City Radnor, and the city agencies that are involved in the Atlantic Yards project. This is not, if you've been to one of these meetings, you understand, this is not yet a smooth, easy process where information flows freely and questions are easily answered. But it is a public meeting, and the more people that show an interest in what is going on there, the more the concern of this community will be reflected to the people involved working on this project. And so I encourage everybody to attend the District Service Cabinet meetings, support the efforts of Councilmember James and our other elected officials in right now doing the, short of governance reform, doing the best they can to be able to provide some level of transparency on this project. And then the fourth and final thing I'll talk about is basically community watchdogism. I don't know if that's a word or not, but in the absence of having either transparency and decision-making at the board level, which we're seeking through governance reform, having meaningful oversight through cooperation with our elected officials, which Councilmember James is seeking through the District Service Cabinet, what does the community have? Well, we have each other, and those of us who live in the neighborhood surrounding the project have taken the step of formalizing observation of the project and documenting the kinds of impacts that are taking place there through a site called, and this is now something that's being made available through a website called AtlanticYardsWatch.net. So I'll turn it over to Peter and let him talk a little bit about Atlantic Yards Watch.
I'll be really brief. Give something that summarizes Atlantic Yards generally. Give referred to the Atlantic Yards District Service Cabinet as a public meeting. It's actually not a public meeting. It's a semi-public meeting. That doesn't mean you can't go, and hopefully we can turn it into some form of public meeting in the future. It's not enough time to go into the differences, and I'm not sure I understand them myself.
Peter, speak up just a little.
Sure. I'm not sure I understand the differences, but somebody else can address that. I'm just going to be really brief, because if we have some flyers in the back for AtlanticYardsWatch.net, and it's a website that we've set up, which has two components. One is a way for people to file concerns directly, and they stay public and they're transparent. And there's a component which is stories, and we're actually would be really eager to have other people submit stories and help us come up with ideas for stories. And the notion of the website is that when concerns crop up, and they can be, right now a lot of it's construction based, but as things develop, it will also be about traffic. It can be about open space. It can be about liquor licenses and neighborhood character. And the idea is that the website, because it's public, we can actually use our community knowledge, which is very substantial about the project, and also share information, which is also extremely helpful among each other. So, because one of the things, the differences between what the community does, and the elected officials and the community boards, and how we work together, and Fort City Ratner and the ESBC and city agencies, is that we coordinate and we talk to each other, and we try to share as much as possible. At least ideally we do. Fort City Ratner, the ESBC does not do interagency coordination generally. They do not monitor through-and-ones of the community files. Not everybody knows that. So really what we're trying to do is create a platform for people who are impacted by the project to actually explain how they're being impacted, and hopefully explain to our elected officials and our community boards.
So encourage everybody who is a resident near the project and who is experiencing impacts from Atlantic Yards to visit AtlanticYardsWatch.net, register. Please submit, use the site to post the reports of impacts that you perceive. I mentioned